Welcome to the Iowa blog. We are broadcasting, as you no doubt know, from the library studio here in the Virgin Islands in the midst of the Caribbean Sea. It is a Friday, which means that later this evening we will have family hour. And I come to you with a heavy heart. I don't want to disguise that because it should be obvious. I have been relentlessly slandered by an exceedingly vile, clinically diagnosed psychopath who has made it her life's ambition to destroy me. And she has done so now for 12 months. She has nothing. Literally nothing, but to slander my wife, my friends, and to lie, while pretending that she speaks for God. It is so indicative of everything that is wrong today. And it's not that one person can be this vile. And this is a person that I was more supportive of than anyone in her life, by her own admission in tears to me, when she acknowledged that no one had ever stood up for her before, and that I did so consistently and routinely, trying to help her, support her, teach her, supported her to the tune of $20,000, which she essentially stole under false pretenses. And the problem isn't that these kind of people exist. The world's full of them. I engage on X every day. I've lived a life that is remarkable in many ways. And so I've been exposed to lots of people. There we go. There's my Wookiee. I've been exposed to lots of people over time that are vile. And I think the percentage of people who are mendacious, that are just genuinely evil, has increased dramatically over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I've seen a lot of them come and go. This one isn't particularly any better or worse than any of the others. They're all suffer from insecurities of one manner or another, but you can't pity them because they're so vicious. You can't help them because they're even more vicious the more you try to help them. I'm a perfect example of this. The bigger issue is that there are so many people out there that lack judgment, that are grossly immoral, and that enable these kinds of evil individuals. And when I speak in particular of this psychopath and her enablers, you know who I'm speaking of. And you should be disgusted with yourselves. You should be ashamed. You should know better, but the fact you don't speaks volumes about you. And so my biggest disappointment isn't that the attack continue, that they have now Facebook pages devoted to undermining that which they once supported. It isn't that they've got nothing and all they do is regurgitate absurd, delusional lies, which was the case here, and I will address them later at my convenience. But that there are people who should know better, who enabled her. Shame on you. That's all I've got to say is shame on you. I'm going to return now in our Antichrist series because as we were studying the prophetic book, he's not necessarily a prophet, the author isn't, but it's a prophetic book of Daniel. And considering the prophecies that were provided by Gabriel, who is Dod, Michael, who is Yada, and the unnamed but obvious Elia, it was clear that the discussion was about the arrival of the corporeal existence of Hasatan, that Hasatan would be peaking, that he was going to have this grand crescendo, very much like he writes in the book of Ezekiel, when he's going to attempt to rule Israel and to galvanize 10 leaders around him to make Israel indefensible, leading to the deaths of millions of Jews. Book of Ezekiel's feature is 25 ways to kill a Jew. And then to change Yahweh's instructions regarding the annual meeting time, so every one of the festival feasts is altered. And then to pronounce that he is God. And so having read through this and been able for the first time to delineate the exact days these things will transpire and identify the nature of this Torahless one, the great betrayer, the corporeal manifestation of Satan, the man who is demon possessed, as an international political leader involved in the betrayal of Israel with a cadre of 10 other heads of state. The answer was obvious. It's Donald Trump. And as we were pursuing that, one of the things that became obvious is that it was important for me to return to Yeshaya 14, which is where the great prophet presents the ambition of the adversary. And we were about a third of the way, maybe halfway through it in our series here on the Antichrist, which, by the way, is a misnomer in a way because there was no Christ. But since the whole notion of a Christ is in opposition to the actual Messiah, who is David, the title still fits. The one who is in opposition to the Messiah, who is David, the king of Israel. Since we interrupted that series by better part of a month of live stream broadcasts on the importance of Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah, and then returned to our review of the 89th Mizmor or Psalm in the Rainbow Studio as part of the Twistianity series, and then went back outside to the Ocean Studio to return to the songs and the insights we can glean from our Messiah, Dod. I thought maybe it's best that I start at the beginning of Yeshaya 14. So here we go. By contrast, Yahweh will show compassion and love, demonstrating favoritism towards Jacob. He will once again choose to be with Yisrael. Furthermore, he will restore them within their own land. Yeshaya, Isaiah 14:1. I hear you say, wait a minute. You told me this was going to be about the ambitions of Satan, and here you're reading about what God's going to do with Jacob, Israel. What gives? Are you confused? No. I'm telling you how it begins, and I'm telling you what it says. I'm telling you that Yahweh chose to introduce his essay on the adversary so that you would know who Satan is and how he operates, which is the antithesis of how it is perceived by 99.99999% of people out there, by reminding you of some things that are really important for you to know. Because if you don't have this foundation of knowledge, you will have no way of appreciating what comes next. So it is certain, Yahweh, God's one and only name. It isn't Hashem, it's not G-D, it's not Adonai, it's not Jesus, it's not Christ, it is not the Lord, and it is certainly not Allah. If you do not know Yahweh's name, you do not know him. If you do not have any interest in Yahweh's name, there is no reason for you to listen further. Go ahead and just turn off the broadcast. Go away. If you change your mind, you can come back. If you're about writing YH or WH because you're too ignorant to study how to pronounce it, even when its pronunciation has been given to you, just go away. You've got nothing to say that would be of any interest to anyone who knows God. And if you want to change his name to, well, the Lord or Jehovah or Hashem, then you need to go and maybe bone up on an accurate translation of the third statement God etched in stone, which says that doing anything that negates the value of Yahweh's name is unforgivable. So by contrast, Yahweh will show compassion and love, demonstrating favoritism towards Jacob. Now, Jacob's long gone. So what is he speaking of when he's speaking of Jacob? Well, Jacob became Israel, didn't he? He was the father of the 12 tribes, wasn't he? And so when Yahweh says that he's going to demonstrate favoritism toward Jacob, he's saying two things. One is that you ought to be bright enough to make the connection between Jacob and Israel. And second, that God's favoritism, his compassion, and his enduring love are directed towards Israel. Now, those are two fairly profound conclusions. You ought to ponder them. Because based upon those conclusions, it means that the Christian New Testament is false. It means that the Islamic Quran is false. God did not turn away from his people. He did not reject his people. He did not choose Gentiles over them. He did not choose a church over them. He did not choose a mosque over them. He did not choose Christians or Muslims over them. Yahweh will show compassion and love, demonstrating favoritism towards Jacob, Israel. Since the New Testament not only says the opposite, but requires the opposite, because there is no reason for it to exist unless all of the promises that God made to Israel are transferred to their church. All the commitments he made to Jews are given to Gentiles, and every statement he made regarding Dode is transferred to Jesus. There is no Christianity. It is entirely based upon that transfer. And the justification was that the Jews killed the Christian God. A couple of issues with that scenario, of course. One is, God's not a man. Number two, men can't kill God. Number three, in Roman-occupied Judea in the first century, only the Romans crucified. Number four, it was actually Dode who was crucified, and the problem of the Jews is they didn't recognize that he was there as the Messiah and Savior, serving as the Passover lamb. And fifth, God never, ever says anything about changing his allegiance from Israel to anyone else. So God, in the introduction of the 14th statement, 14th chapter of Yashayah, Isaiah, has obliterated the myth of Christianity in the New Testament. He's also obliterated the mythology of the Talmud because they have written Yahweh's name out of it. And of course, he's obliterated the credibility of the Quran, which is really nothing more than regurgitated Talmud stories anyway. There is a lot of rhetoric now. The most shrill vitriol comes from a man who has admitted to being demon possessed, a man who has received untold money from Muslims, who is promoting his Christianity among MAGA, who says that Jews cannot be the chosen people. Well, God not only said they were, but he is reaffirming it here in Yashayah in the 14th chapter. It says he will once again choose. Bakar means to choose to be with Yisrael. And Od means yet again. So God's saying, I not only chose once, I'm going to choose them again. Now, if you're a Jew, you better be a little bit careful here, which means that he did choose you, but you didn't choose him. You didn't reciprocate. So for the only way this relationship's going to work again is that you need to change so that God can choose you again, which he will, because you will. Well, that's a lot to learn. And we're only through the first two sentences of the first verse. Furthermore, he will restore them within their own land. Here, this was written 700 and probably 25-ish BCE. At the time, Israel would be removed from their land by the Assyrians within a matter of a couple of decades. So this is before they were removed. The Yehudim, the Jews, wouldn't be removed from their land until another 125 years or so by the Babylonians. And then both would be, if you will, removed, particularly Judea, would be removed from their land by the Romans in 133 when trying to deal with the uprising of Rabbi Akiba's false messiah, Bar Kokhba. The Jews became slaves throughout Europe. Of course, they were also enslaved. But a remnant was left under the siege of Vespasian and Titus. And Jews were mostly slaves in Europe and later treated with dhimmi status in the lands plagued by Islam until 1948, when Jews were able to return to their land. Quite a prophecy, isn't it? I don't think there's any other people in history that have a history that goes back 3,000 years. And if you take it all the way back to Abraham and Sarah, Yishak and Jacob, then it goes back 4,000 years, that have been booted out of their land so many times only to return. It's quite a prophecy. But the fact that it's about their return, it means that what follows was written for the last days. The fact that God says, I'm going to choose them again, tells us it's about the last days, because that hasn't even happened yet. And oh, by the way, Jews have not been restored within their own land yet. There's huge swaths of their land that they are not in control of. God was quite clear when he set the boundaries of what would be Israel, and they do not occupy the boundaries. So we're still looking at a future fulfillment. Foreigners from different cultural and ethnic groups will accompany them, and they will be chosen by and appointed to the house of Jacob. And the greatest of the people and many among the family who will select and receive them. I think I missed a verb in there. So it's, you're trying to read the bold print, but let me go back from the beginning. Foreigners from different cultural and ethnic groups will accompany them because they will be chosen by and appointed to the house of Jacob. And this includes the greatest of the people and many others among the family who will select and receive them. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so what we know is that there will be a ger among the Israelites when they have their land restored to them, and who is part of this process of God re-choosing Israel. And there's not only going to be a foreigner who is associating with Israel in this way, but there will be those who are Goyim who will be associated with this individual. So there's a man whom God has selected, and those who accompany him and support this endeavor are going to be among those who encourage Yehudim and Israelites to return to Yahweh so that he can choose them all over again, and so that he can restore them to the totality of their land. That's an interesting insight too, isn't it? So God is saying that he's going to accomplish this great transformation from Jews being harassed by the world at a point in time where there is going to be foreigners, Goyim, that are going to play a major role in supporting them. The very people, the ethnicities that have persecuted them, there's going to be some individuals among those ethnicities who are going to come to their rescue. Profound. And they're going to accompany them. They will join them. They will focus on them because they will be chosen by and appointed to the house of Jacob. So God has chosen some ger, some foreigners associating with Jews, to accompany God's people such that they restore their relationship with Yahweh, and so that Yahweh can choose them all over again and restore them to the land. And that these people are literally appointed to the house of Israel. God is designating them for this purpose. Now, you'd think if I was a Israelite, I'd be trying to figure out who that individual and his associates are. Who has written 35 books, for example, introducing Yahweh under Yadayah, offering them at yadayah.com? Who is doing many hundreds of Yahweh blogs trying to accomplish this very thing on behalf of Israel? And the greatest of the people, and many others in the family, who will select and receive them. So God is saying the best and the brightest of Israel are going to receive them, and or that the foreigners who are facilitating this by God's appointment on behalf of Israel are the best and the brightest of that different ethnicity, an ethnicity different than Israel, which would be speaking of the Nakar and Nakri, this observant foreigner, and the covenant family. So God's telling you how you're going to overcome what follows, isn't he? He's setting it in the context, and he's telling you, before he tells you who the adversary is, he's telling you who your friend is. Because God has appointed someone whose primary job it is to defang the serpent on behalf of Israel. There is a fellow out there that has written 5 volumes, 825 pages apiece, to completely destroy the credibility of Satan as the ungod of Islam. 4,200 pages of irrefutable evidence as the antidote for that toxicity. And that same fellow wrote 5 volumes called Twistianity to completely destroy Satan's ambition through the Christian New Testament to be perceived as a replacement Messiah and a replacement God. And that same fellow was able to prove that the book of Ezekiel was Satan's autobiography, exposing who he is and what he's trying to achieve. He is the antidote for these things. And at the same time, he wrote another 25 books focused on translating the oldest manuscripts found in the Dead Sea Scrolls to what Yahweh actually said so that you could come to know him. God honors his promises. He goes on to say, I will arrive, or excuse me, not I will arrive, they will arrive, bringing them to their region and to their dwelling places. They will arrive. Now, the last individuals that Yahweh talked about were this foreigner, this Gur, who is going to be leading a group of individuals that are ethnically different than Israel, and how they've been appointed to the house of Israel, and that they are unique and among the best and the brightest. And so when he says they will arrive, he's speaking of them. Now, there's very little time left because the next seminal event is the fulfillment of Shabuah. And depending on which part of Shabuah we're looking for, the creation of the terrorist state that makes Israel indefensible, which is just 7 months off, or less than 20 months to the harvest of Shabuah. And so they will arrive. They're going to be brought to their region and to their dwelling place. And it is true that this Gur will be brought into Jerusalem in the end, 3.5 years before the end. He's going to accompany a Israelite that you may have heard of, Elijah. And their dwelling place will be on top of the Temple Mount in the tabernacle of the restoring witness. The household and family of Israel, individuals who either strive against the Almighty or engage and endure with God, will, without any coercion or other controlling influence, receive them as an inheritance. It's kind of funny because in a statement we read yesterday, it said that that covenant family is the inheritance of the Nakri, this observant foreigner. He is inheriting them. That is the thing that he has achieved on behalf of Yahweh and the king, and that he is giving them, presenting them to God and to his king. And here it says that likewise, it's a mutual situation here, which is the way relationships should be. It says the household and family of Israel will, without any coercion or other controlling influences, receive them as an inheritance. The source of inheritance for Israel, the ability to enter the return to Eden on Sukkah, to receive Yahweh and Dod back on Kippurim is through this individual whose sacrifice will be known as the Adamah Parah on Teruah. And that is how they will inherit eternal life and access to Yahweh. So we are a mutual inheritance. And this will occur upon Yahweh's world as a result of the Adamah, the bloody red man of the earth. As male workers serving as laborers, as female staff, servants, mistresses, maids, and slaves. It is something that we've talked about in the past, and I've brought it up many more times. But we read in Zechariah that there are two groups of people that will be returning to Jerusalem during the evening of Teruah, between the Friday evening, the 23rd of September gleaning, and the Saturday morning, 24th of September 2033, sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. This bloody red man of the earth, who is the productive bull, that there are two groups that are arriving. One is Israelites who have not come to embrace Yahweh yet, but who are not so strung out on their religion and their politics that they aren't salvageable. They will be those who are still guilty of religious and political crimes of omission, not commission. They will not be promoters of religion and politics, just victims of them. And at the same time, there is another chariot, the dappled one, that is going to pick up the Goyim, whose attitude and aptitude are appropriate for them to be the workers, male and female, throughout the millennial celebration of Sukkah. And there are some people that say, wait a minute, you're going to have slave labor in Sukkah? Well, in a way, yes. Well, isn't that mean? Isn't that going back to a time that's inappropriate? Well, no, because the option here is that Yahweh, since Yahweh is returning us to the conditions of Eden, everyone who is polluted with religion and politics must be expunged from the earth. They're gone. And that the option for these Goyim, when Yahweh reselects the best of Israel to purge of their religious guilt, in the case of the adulterous woman of Numbers 5, is that since these Goyim were not overtly anti-Semitic, they weren't overtly religious and hostile to Israel or to Yahweh or to his beloved son, there's no reason really to take their lives. Now, the fact is that their lives were a gift anyway, so God, by shortening a gift, isn't doing them any harm, and they would not have gone to Sheol. They just would have simply ceased to exist so we can move on with the millennial Shabbat. But the very fact is that they're going to be allowed into the celebration of the return to Eden. So the working conditions are going to be ideal, and the people who are going to be allowed in will have passed a test for their trustworthiness. So they're going to be the best employers in the history of the world. And so this is the best time to work and the best environment to work. And it's a whole lot better than being dead, right? But God wants you to know that's the way the world is being set up. So if you are a Goy and you have not become part of the covenant with this Ger, then your best hope is to be one of the workers entering the millennial Shabbat. And if you don't think that's fair, take it up with God and see if he cares. So it will come to be that those who had been their captives will take them under their control, and they will rule over them and direct those who had oppressed and exploited them. Yeshayah 14:2. God is fair. And this idea that you see in Christianity of forgiveness doesn't exist in Yahweh's parlance. He does not forgive. God's capable of removing our guilt, and he does through what Dod fulfilled on Matzah. He is capable of giving people a second chance, depending on the nature of their crime. But the fact of the matter is that God must, I should say, hold people accountable, collectively and individually, for the oppression and the subjugation and persecution of his people. Christianity has persecuted and demeaned Jews and robbed Jews, abused Jews for 18 centuries. There are 2.5 billion Christians. They cannot simply be overlooked. Something has to give. There has to be recompense for that. I don't think any Muslims will be included in this. I think that Allah is so demented, the Quran is so perverse that there will be none. But should I be wrong, then it will be the worst possible Muslims that would be availed this opportunity. And when you consider what Islam has done to Jews over the last 1,400 years, if they have the absolute most disgusting jobs, and it is in fact that they're at the lowest end of this scale, and that they are serving Jews because of the way that they have abused them over the years, then, well, that would be fair. And I've got no issue with that. So long as I never have to look at them or talk to them, I see that as fair. Marxists, of course, have become a prime enemy of Jewish people, and so I don't have a problem with them being used, because they are claiming death to Jews and the eradication of the state of Israel. I think it's only fair. God is fair. Now, the very fact that this comes as a 1, 2, 3, God's restoring Israel. He's choosing Israel again. He is giving them their land back, all of it, and that he's accomplishing this through a goy and a ger, which is a goy, in conjunction with some really remarkable people. And that leads to the administration of these workers that are going to come into the millennial Shabbat. There is very likely a connection between these things, a correlation between them, so that the ger and those associated with him are going to have a significant say over who is allowed into these positions and how they are used and treated. God works through people, and it seems as if he has set up this ger in that role. I don't need to know that until God says, yep, you read that correctly. And if I read that incorrectly, then God's going to say, you read that incorrectly. This is what I really meant. And we'll have a different plan. But it's pretty straightforward the way I'm reading it. It will come to pass in that day, Yahweh will restore you, speaking to Israel, and promote a favorable, restful, and spiritual alliance from your religious suffering and agony, and from the ordeal of worshiping, from this political turmoil, terrorizing anxiety, and raucous trouble you're experiencing, as well as from the harsh forced labor and cruel slavery in which they had you serve. All right. Progressing right down the list. So the ger is responsible for a number of things, and ultimately it's going to result in that day that Yahweh, who works through people, is going to restore Israel to a favorable state. And to restore Israel to a favorable state, which means that this remnant of Israel is going to be allowed back into the garden. For that to occur, the following things have to be eliminated. Religious suffering. All religion gone. The ordeal and agony associated with worshiping. Religious burdens, which is probably the most burdensome religion ever, is Judaism. And the worst religion ever in terms of its ordeals associated with worship would be Islam. And so they will all be eliminated. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. But also from political turmoil, terrorizing anxiety and raucous trouble that you're experiencing. And so Jews are experiencing turmoil really in three places. And all three of those have to be eliminated. The government right now and the government over the next 8 years in Israel has to go. The government of the United States, which is the house of the great betrayer of Israel, Donald Trump, who is the corporeal manifestation of Satan, that has to go, has to be destroyed, has to be eliminated. That's where 40% of the Jewish population lives, 45% in Israel. The remaining 15% are mostly in Europe, which has become Marxist and highly anti-Semitic, particularly with the influx of Muslims, which the United States caused, by the way. That will also be eliminated. So no religion, no politics. The economic systems of apartheid and of the caste system that permeated the world will be a non-starter. Jews were brought into Europe as forced laborers. They were slaves. And because of Christianity and the Roman Catholic Church, they never had any rights in Europe. And with anti-Semitism and its rise, those rights became fewer and fewer, and to the point they didn't have the right to live. All of these things will be gone. So we're not going to have a caste economic system. We're not going to have apartheid. We're not going to have any politics. We're not going to have any religion for those who re-enter Gan Eden, which means Satan's pretty much out of an occupation. Isn't that a nice introduction so far to the ploys of Satan? Then it says, in that day, you should lift up this particular mashal, this comparative word picture and proverb, which illustrates an ethical point to provide guidance and to build character while equipping you to exercise good judgment regarding authority figures, political leaders, and governments. Mashal. Which mashal? This mashal. Wait, so mashals are the proverbs. Those are the things that are attributed to Solomon that Dode wrote the vast majority of. This is not a proverb. This is found in Isaiah. So what's the proverb? A mashal is a word picture. It is something that a wordsmith can create. Obviously, I was the greatest wordsmith in universal history. Dode was par excellence. Oh, what a lyricist. But I want to tell you, having read everyone's writings, it's pretty hard to beat Yashaya. His vocabulary is extraordinary, his sense of logic, his ability to reason. One of the things that you find with a really effective wordsmith is that they can combine very short, to-the-point sentences with extremely long sentences that are very complex, that all lead to a point and make the proper connection between things, using the right word for each idea being conveyed. And in this regard, Yashaya has no rival. So in that day, you should lift up this particular mashal. Well, we've gone through it so far. We know exactly what the picture that God is painting, this word picture he's painting. He's told you exactly what he's going to do, when he's going to do it, how he's going to do it, through whom he's going to accomplish it, and how everything's going to materialize as we re-enter Gan Eden without any trace of religion, politics, conspiracy, caste economic system, with the help of a rather exceptional Gur and the team working with him so that God can re-choose Israel all over again and can restore them to a marvelous state of spiritual rest. That's the word picture that's been painted. So on that day, you should lift up this particular mashal. And the one who reigned and ruled over, thereby influencing Babel, the confounding confusion of commingling which occurred in Babylon with the Lord and through the Bible. So in addition to this introduction, you should know now that where this is all leading, because it is all against Allah and in opposition to the one who has reigned and ruled over the earth, the one influencing through Babel, the Bible, Babel with the Lord, in conjunction with the Lord, who is Satan. Babel is the birthplace of the integration of religion and politics. It's the wellspring from which Christianity emerged. It's the place where the Babylonian Talmud was written. It's the place where the Quran was pieced together initially. Babel. Babel is Satan's stock in trade, because there really is no way to effectively mislead a large group of people through religion or politics if everything you say is untrue or completely original. The only way you can effectively mislead is to mix truth with lies, to take something Yahweh has said that is true and pervert it and twist it and mix it together with lots of untrue statements, such that you can deceive that way, and it gives your lie credibility. And if you don't understand that, then consider a counterfeit bill, where 99.999% of the strokes look legitimate. But the very fact that it's a fraud designed to confound and confuse by intermingling that which does not belong makes it actually a liability and a crime. Such is the truth with Babel. And you may ask, how is it in the midst of these extraordinary circumstances that the oppressor promoting this onslaught of persecution through the systematic, boisterous promotion of mistaken beliefs will subside and cease so as to observe the Shabbat? Wow. Again, God's just laying it all out there for us. All right. So we have the gird that precedes this corporeal manifestation of the man from Babel, the great babbler. Boy, who's the, Babel means to confound. And the primary thing that Trump suffers from is called confabulation. It means that in his mind and in his words, he has intermixed truth and lies such that there is very little correlation between what he says and reality, and that the only thing that makes any of the lies seem credible is this occasional intermixing of things which are true. Trump is a confabulator. And this individual will be Babel, intermixing truth and lies. That's why I'm just so astonished that with the prophets having told us precisely when and who would betray them, the United States, Donald Trump at this very moment, and how he would betray them, that the Jews celebrated Trump as if he is the second coming of Cyrus. It shows it shows complete lack of judgment, like they have no functioning conscience in Israel. And they did a deal with the devil to trade 20 tormented lives for 2,000 murderous Muslims who will kill far, far more than were freed. It was a deal with the devil. So the question is, you may ask how it is in the midst of all this. You've got the Gur and his team arriving in terms of reaching out to Jews such that there is this opportunity for renaissance, for this return to Yahweh and for spiritual rest. And yet there is all of this religiosity and politics that's still swirling around that needs to be purged for God's people to return to the garden. And in these 8 years where all of this is coming to this crescendo, where the influence of Donald Trump, and who is Satan incarnate, is going to become so savage, so severe, so debilitating economically, and also just in pure chaos and anarchy with war and with rhetoric that is so disorienting people to have no idea what's happening around them. They're just totally confounded. So how is it in the midst of these extraordinary circumstances that this babbler, this man of confounding confabulation, whose onslaught has persecuted as a result of his boisterous promotion of mistaken beliefs, as he attacks his own cities and his own people and the world, how is that going to subside and cease so that we can enjoy and observe the Shabbat? The Shabbat is the celebration of Sukkah for 1,000 years in the restored earth back to the conditions of Eden. And so it may appear during this next 8 years that there's just no way. The whole world has been turned upside down. It is so vicious and sadistic. How in the world is this systematic and boisterous promotion of mistaken beliefs of this extraordinary oppressor, who is the literal embodiment of Babylon, going to cease? Yet, in this way, even in the midst of this, the exploitation, the manipulation, and the corruption, as well as the overt desire to control and tax, will be abated. You know, tariffs are a tax. Exploitation. Trump is amassing a personal fortune, personally and with his direct family, into the tens of billions, and it will soon be with the Bitcoin transactions funded by Muslim despots, into the hundreds of billions of dollars. He is exploiting America. He is going to present his Bitcoin scenario as the replacement for the Federal Reserve and the national debt and wipe out everybody else's savings. He is going to manipulate the world into wars. Claiming to be a peace president, he is exactly as you would expect from Satan. Saying one thing, doing another. Corruption, we have never seen a more corrupt individual in a position of political prominence. No one ever has had such an overt desire to control. Not Hitler, not Stalin, not Caesar. No one. We're witnessing the single worst expression of humanity in human history. Yashayah 14:4. Yahweh will break, shattering and crushing the staff and club of religious wickedness and political oppression. These proverbial quotes and edicts used by rulers to control people and nations. Yashayah 14:5. Who struck and beat, afflicting and killing people, arrogantly and insolently enraged and furious, without reason or cause, with ongoing and unceasing slaughtering blows, vicious attacks, and devastating plagues. Yahweh's going to bring it to an end. And why is he going to bring it to an end? Why is he going to crush the rebellion? Why is he going to do this? Because the staff and the club of religious wickedness and political oppression have used all manner of citations and quotes and edicts to rule over and control people and nations. Why God doesn't like religion and politics, because they are control mechanisms. They have struck and beat, they have afflicted and killed God's people, his family, for a very long time, and it's never been worse than it is right now. And if you wanted to find the embodiment of egomaniacal, of arrogant, of insolent, of a man who is enraged and furious without reason, then all you would have to do is look at the Copper Con. Donald Dumpster. There has never been in all of human history a man as arrogant, as insolent, as enraged or furious as Donald Trump, and all without reason or cause. And yet his blows and attacks and plagues are so common that nobody even knows how to respond to him, because the insanity of today is overshadowed by greater insanity tomorrow, which becomes even greater instability the following day. It's the rule of utter chaos. God's trying to tell you, as clearly as words allow, what you should be expecting, no matter if you are a Israelite or a Gentile anywhere in this world, as to who is destroying it and how it's going to happen and how to identify that person if you want to be among that remnant who is able to enter the Shabbat of Sukkah, which begins on October 7th, 2033, year 6000 Yah. As Gentiles, Trump, America, Europe, they sought to subdue and control, ruling over and governing by imposing their authority and trampling down free will to dominate nations. There has never been as vicious attack on free will in America or in Europe as what we're witnessing today. Free will is so untidy in the hands of tyrants, grievously and systematically depriving people of their rights while persecuting them without relief or restraint. In America, ICE and the deployment of U.S. troops is worse than the Gestapo, worse than the brown shirts. They weren't that vicious. This is actually worse. Without relief, without restraint. These are words that you would have had a very difficult time understanding prior to 6 months ago. And now we're living in the midst of them. That's the nature of prophecy. It's one of the reasons why I always said, I want you to stop writing and re-editing and correcting your books and moving to this next stage where you turn on the camera and the lights and speak directly to my people, because you can read the translations that you have written and convey their meaning in a timely fashion, connecting the dots to provide understanding at an ever accelerating rate. That was Scream was Asher. Nothing happened to Asher except Asher is occasionally a biter, and she bites her nails. Our beloved Asher has this OCD thing about biting her nails, and she'll pull until she hurts herself. That's why on occasion you'll see me in a program trying to get her to stop. She's doing it less and less, but occasionally this is what happens. And so we do our best to try to distract her and protect her in that way. We continue to read Yeshaya 14:7. The entire earth will be a home at rest spiritually, at peace and reconciled, restored and liberated, bursting forth in song, shouting for joy. So God wants you to know that there is an end to the heartache, an end to the deprivation of rights, to death, to great chaos. That yes, the next 8 years are going to be beyond anything you could possibly imagine in terms of anarchy and destruction and death, deceit, confabulation, lies, egomaniacal, narcissists, and psychopaths. But it will come to an end. The likes of the reprehensible person that smeared my wife and my dear friend of over 20 years will cease to exist. The Trumps will be gone. His cabinet will be gone. The MAGAs will be gone. The Christians will be gone. The Muslims will be gone. The Marxists will be gone. There will be those that arrive in Jerusalem, and they will benefit from the sacrifice of the Adam of Paran. They will be purged of their guilt, and the millennial Shabbat will begin. And the reason that God says that the earth will be restored, liberated, and bursting forth in song, shouting for joy, is the greatest lyricist, songwriter, and singer in human history is returning. In his name is David, God's beloved son. Quite an introduction. I mean, it takes your breath away as to how all of this was made available to us. And it really isn't until it was upon us that we can understand it. But really, it wouldn't have done anybody else any good, I guess, up to the point of, if you understood this long ago, you would know that Satan's ambition is not to be worshipped as Satan, as the adversary. He doesn't want to be known as Satan. He wants to destroy the satanic title of the adversary. He wants to be seen as God. He wants to lord over people. He wants to be worshipped. And that would have precluded many from being Christians and Muslims, and would have precluded the growth of Judaism as well. In Judaism, they don't believe in a place called Sheol, but God clearly tells us it exists. That name happens to be identical in the Hebrew text with Shaul, the king, and Shaul, the author of the first 14 books of the Christian New Testament. Sheol and Shaul as the least desirable and the most depressing alternative are anxious in anticipation, indeed excited to summon and meet you, announcing your arrival. Yes, Donald Trump is regularly now says, I don't know if I'll be able to make it into heaven. I don't think so. I know he has a confirmed reservation in hell because God has said so. It's going to be September 24th, 2033 is when he is incarcerated. And because Shaul is synonymous with Sheol, there'll be many Christians that will join him there. Many MAGAs will join him there. And it is the time that they will be dispatched. The only reason that the earth can be returned to the conditions of Eden is those who were the most obnoxious, the most egotistical, the most destructive, the most dishonest, the most ruthless against God's people are all sent to Sheol. And so sometimes I get people that bite back at me and says, how dare you say that I'm sending so-and-so to Sheol? I'm actually doing them a favor. I'm doing the world a favor because I'm conveying what God said and I'm applying his justifications. And if I tell you that Donald Trump has a confirmed reservation in Sheol, and I can read the prophecy from Isaiah that affirms this to be the case, then if you're a MAGA, if you're a Christian supporting him, If you are in his cabinet, if you are an Israelite that is endorsing him and supporting him, then you have the opportunity to back away and to stop doing that so you don't join him. It's actually an exceedingly compassionate thing to do. You can never be wrong when you convey what Yahweh teaches. They have been alerted and are aroused to crush all of the departed souls of those who have been leaders and rulers of the earth. I like to say that all means all, and that's all means. Whole means all. God despises politics because politicians control people. They mislead them. They rob them. They fleece them. They do what Donald Trump is doing to them, what the European heads of states are doing to them. And so many of them have turned on Israel and his people, as we're witnessing today. So God is saying that all of these departed souls of those who have been the leaders and the rulers of the earth are going to be crushed. Now, it's interesting that Sheol is a lightless place without fire, but it is a crushing experience because every reference to Sheol paints Sheol very similarly to what we would call a black hole. So this is something to keep in mind. It's a crushing experience. Nothing ever escapes the gravity of a black hole. Not done pressing this point home, God says the leaders of every nation and institution, the most powerful and important individuals influencing every society, religiously, militarily, and politically, of the Gentiles and their nations, have established their thrones and their positions of power. What that means is that this idea that God chose somebody for political power is utter nonsense. You know, in Islam, they claim that Allah appointed them to these roles. Well, Allah is not God, and Yahweh didn't. Throughout Europe and really through Asia as well, when leaders ruled, they claimed they were gods, and they claimed that they were appointed by gods. Not true, according to God. When Paul said that all governments are for good and that you should submit to them, he lied. The opposite of what God says. And that all human governance is established by the men who control them. This notion of MAGAs, that mythical incident where Trump was allegedly shot, but you don't see any nick to his ears. They posed him for a photo op, moving the photographers into position. And there is absolutely no damage. I guess it's his right ear. No damage. I mean, not even a nick in that ear, not a scar, not nothing. This idea that God chose him and protected him, you would be wrong. God's going to incarcerate him in Sheol. All of them will respond and say to you, have you also become weak, afflicted, riddled with anxiety, similar to us, becoming like a proverb? Yeshaya 14:10. Yeah, they all think they're invincible. They all think they're going to get to rule forever. You know, look at the pharaohs with all the trouble they went to create these mummified bodies, thinking they were going to have a bodily resurrection. Didn't work out so well for them, didn't they? And Babylon and Sumer, the kings would be buried with their thousands of people to be their servants. Didn't turn out very well for them. And so what's going to happen is they're all going to end up in the place of questioning, Sheol, which means to question, and they're going to question one another, riddled with anxiety, and said, how did all of this happen? Boy, we were the most powerful people in the history of the earth, and now here we are in hell. Didn't work out the way we thought it was going to happen. Your arrogance, your unwarranted status and desire to rise above others, your lack of morality, your propensity to blow smoke and agitating self-glorification have brought you down to Sheol. Donald Trump. I point him out because he is the living embodiment of these words and so many others that were found in Daniel and in Yeshaya about him. Your arrogance, unwarranted status, and desire to rise above others, your lack of morality, propensity to blow smoke, and agitating self-glorification have brought you down to Sheol, hell. And at the boisterous and disquieting sound of your disgraceful and foolish implements, maggots will be spread out as a bed, and a crimson grub shall become your covers. Yep, those that have been particularly adverse, like Paul, like Muhammad. It's interesting that Donald Trump is the modern embodiment of Paul and Muhammad. Both Paul and Muhammad admitted to being sexual perverts. Muhammad, raped countless women after murdering their husbands and sons and fathers. And he had a whole bevy of children as his sex toys when he was 66, according to the year of the elephant that the Quran mentions. He had sex with a 6-year-old girl. He was a sexual pervert. He committed incest, rape, and pedophilia. Paul says that he was such a sexual pervert that he didn't really have a full grasp on the scope of his sexual perversity until such time as he became an expert in the Torah, and the Torah was what revealed to him that, yes, indeed, you are a sexual pervert. And you have to be involved in really bad, nasty stuff to be a sexual pervert, according to the Quran, because promiscuity doesn't cut it. God has nothing to say about that. You have to be involved in rape, incest, pedophilia, or bestiality. There's your Paul, by his own admission. Now, both of those men admitted they were demon-possessed. Paul at the last chapter of the second book to the Corinthians, and Muhammad both after his first experience with Allah and the end of his life. Both admitted they were demon-possessed. The Torah and prophets say that Donald Trump is demon-possessed. And we now know that Donald Trump had sex with children and that he has been accused by many women and actually convicted now of rape. They're all the same. They were extraordinarily egotistical beyond belief. They were all liars. They were all murderers. They were all money grubbers. Same. Satan has a type. Donald Trump is Satan's type, as was Paul, as was Muhammad. Adolf Hitler, same thing. Oh, how you have fallen and been cast down from the spiritual realm. Hillel ben Shakar, flashy, shining, and boastful spawn of the eastern dawn. Halal means to radiate light. It's from the verb halal. It's interesting that in Islam, that is the word for good. And of course, it is Satan's name. Shakar means of the rising sun. Sun rises in the east. Babylon is in the east from Jerusalem. Flashy, shiny, boastful. Speaking of the eastern dawn. One of the reasons that name was chosen for him is that Hasatan realizes that the most effective way of diverting souls from Yahweh isn't actually to pretend that he is Yahweh, which he does on occasion, but he's just not credible at it. But he can pretend that he is Dod, the Messiah, and the Son of God, because when he does that, he takes away salvation, because salvation is only achievable through Dod, because Dod fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. And so, since God speaks of Dod as the greater luminary, as brilliant as the sun, then Shakar is Satan being the flashy version, Ben, son, that is Dod. He's the flashy son. That's what the name means. He is therefore Jesus. He is Muhammad. He's Allah. That's a little frightening, isn't it? You have been disassociated and cut off, cut down, and cast away to the earth for having been weakened and then overwhelmed, conquering through religious and political prostrations, and thereby lording over people, and specifically Gentiles and their nations and institutions. There was something I didn't mention in that previous statement that I should briefly draw your attention to, is that not only is Hasatan going to work through people who are boisterous, who are exceedingly arrogant and sexually perverted, totally dishonest. God is saying that Hasatan actually had a life in the spiritual realm. He was a spiritual being before he was cast down. And in the book of Ezekiel, Satan admits that he was one of the cherub that was on the wall of Eden prior to deceiving Chava. He speaks of how glorious he perceived himself and how unfair it was for God to have cut him down for a little act of indiscretion. So he was a spiritual being. He has been rendered a serpent, toxic as he is. And he has been disassociated from the rest of the spiritual realm, cut off, cut down, cast away. But he was sent from Shamayim, the spiritual realm of heaven, down to earth, where he immediately weakened and overwhelmed. And he conquered through the use of religion and political prostrations, thereby lording over people, specifically Gentiles and their institutions. Hasatan is the god of bowing down in prayer and worship, Christianity and Islam. And he is a major and significant presence here on the earth. And his religions are most noted for their Gentile devotees, Christianity and Islam. Oh, this is in Yeshayah 14. So pretty hard to deny any of this, isn't it? Because you yourself said in your determination and based upon your inclinations, I will ascend, rise up, and be continuously exalted. In other words, he had been spiritual, was cast down to the earth, where he is using religion and politics, worship, bowing down, if you will, to control people. And he's doing this because he has decided that he wants to ascend. He wants to rise up. He doesn't want to be Satan, the adversary. He wants to rise up. He wants to be exalted. He wants to ascend back into the spiritual realm of the heaven and to be perceived as a god or goddess, if you're into the mother goddess cult, over and above the stars, the most luminous and brightest places, and the best and the brightest of God. He wants to be better than any of them. That would include, of course, Dode, God's beloved son, David. So you're not going to see Satan as the adversary. Those who worship Satan as if he were the devil are making a fool of themselves, and Satan has nothing to do with them, not even interested in them, has never met with them, would never use them. They are just completely wrong. Satan does not want to be worshipped as Satan. He wants to be worshipped as God. Well, junior God anyway. So I will lift up and exalt, increasing my throne. So the seat of power and influence of Hasatan, Satan, he is lifting up. Now, thrones that are lifted up become more prominent, don't they? So he's not trying to hide, is he? Oh, throne, seat of St. Peter and the Vatican, right? Come kiss my ring. Thrones, all of the kings of the Islamic world and the dictators of the Islamic world. Donald Trump, the way he's using the Oval Office and the way he's gilded it. Throne, seat of power. He is presenting himself in the most powerful of all positions to be seen, to control, not to lurk in the darkness. The religious world has Satan all upside down and backwards. He is the opposite of what they perceive him. I will establish and inhabit a dwelling place on the mount of the eternal witness to the restoring appointments. He already has one. He has two. Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. They are Satan's dwelling places right on the mount of the eternal witness to the restoring testament. I made a deal with God. I said, I'll do my bit. I'll do everything that's asked of me there, but I have one request of you. You destroy the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque before my arrival. I'm allergic to these things. I'm not going to be able to function with those things as a backdrop. Destroy them. But he's done it. He's built them, and Israel didn't have the character to eliminate them. In association with the distant boundaries and the depths below to the summit above, to be concealed along that which is treasured in the north. Isaiah 14:13. Yes, indeed. Satan wants it all. It's above the mount, what's below the mount, what's left and right, north and south, but mostly north, because that's where the wealth is. I will ascend and be continuously exalted, presented as superior, so that I am worshipped. Allah, I will rise, Allah, above the heights of the clouds. When I was saying Allah, you know what the Hebrew reads? Allah. Satan is rising up through religion. That's what God said. He is not lurking in the darkness as people perceive Satan. He's right out in the open. And every cathedral and church and mosque, synagogue and temple. That's who you're praying to or bowing down to should you go into one. That's who inspired your scriptures if you're reading the New Testament, the Talmud, the Zohar, or the Quran. I will, on my own initiative, make myself appear as if I were Elyon, the very influence of God. Elyon is what Hasatan is, Satan, is striving to be. And it is very often rendered Almighty God, and yet El is God. On means all things pertaining to, and yet it has a Y in it, which is a Yod or a Yod in Hebrew, which is a hand. And the hand speaks of influence. For example, when Yahweh returns with Dod, Yahweh said that Dod, his beloved son, our king, will be Elyon, the very influence of God Almighty. He didn't say he is going to be El. The man is not going to become God. He is going to be Elyon, which is the influence of God, the very hand of God. And since Yahweh ascribes Elyon to Dod, guess what Satan wants to be? He wants to be perceived as the Son of God, as the Messiah, as the former and returning King, as the Savior. Well, is there a religion that presents someone as a counterfeit of all of these things? Yes, there is. Christianity. Christianity is Satan's magnus opus, his greatest achievement. But it was also Islam, where there's a false Messiah, and there, of course, is a false Messiah in Judaism with Bar Kokhba, who, by the way, is son of a star. Keeping all of this in context, that's 14:4. Surely, to Sheol, to hell, you are being forced down to the remote depths of the prison. Isaiah 14:15. The one who sought to rise above all will be taken down to the lowest possible place, just as the religious leaders, the popes, the imams, the priests, all of those who tormented people. Think of all of those civilizations throughout time that perpetrated child and human sacrifice for the purpose of terrorizing people into submission. All of them who lorded over the people, and all of these tremendous despots, as Donald Trump is becoming the worst of them, all through time. God is saying not only will Hasatan be sent down into Sheol, into the depths of this prison, but so will they. Not some of them, all of them. Those who look at you will stare in your direction, trying to understand how this individual caused the earth to tremble, astonished, agitated, and angry by invoking fear within empires and governments. 14:16. He is not going to look so majestic outside of his cathedrals and temples and shrines, is he? Allahu Akbar, not going to be so Akbar at this time. And so you can imagine all the Muslims who murdered Jews thinking, oh, I'm going to go to paradise and have all these virgins. And there you are in the prison of Sheol in a black hole. And there is your God, Allah. Boy, that's going to be astonishing, isn't it? And for all of those popes, all of the priests, all of the rabbis who promoted false gods to be there and say, wow, so boy, did we ever get it wrong. You're a nothing. You're a nobody.
Mommy God will be there.
Pardon?
Mommy God will be there.
Oh, yeah, Mommy God. Mommy Goddess will certainly be there. Oh, but that's so mean of you to say that I'm going to go to Sheol. No, it's exceedingly compassionate, because you have a bunch of numbskulls that are enabling you that shouldn't have to join you there. And there are mothers, many others, that are being lured in, and those who are going to be precluded from knowing the truth because you tried to besmirch it. There is really no one who deserves it more other than the Donald. Chew on it. Choke on it. You have no one to blame but yourself. How was the world caused to be a lifeless place without the Word? It's so obvious that they didn't see it. They went on and continued to be religious. They made Satan their God, and no one was the wiser for it. And now that it's obvious to them, they're saying, boy, we ended up destroying a lot of people. We made the earth really lifeless and desolate as a result of our actions. Oh, God. Do we have a mulligan, maybe a redo? Can we reboot? Just like a video game, you can start over again? No, I'm sorry, it's over. You got one shot at it. You blew it. And this is your fate. So if you think that God's not going to send people to Sheol who have worked against his people, who have besmirched his message, who have denied the great contributions of his beloved son, Dode, think again. If you want to condemn someone for sending people to hell, take up your argument with God. He says the cities will be left in ruin. Those he controlled, he will never release. They will never go home. Those who have been influenced by this, whether it's their ego that got the best of them, their insecurities, covetousness for possessions or the things that other people enjoyed that they would never have, whatever the motivation may have been, just overall vitriol, psychopathy. There is no coming back from it. And God wants you to know that you will pay the price as a result of it. Each of the political leaders of the Gentiles and their nations, all of them, will have been laid to rest. Each individual in splendor and majesty, in his own household, in his own temple and tomb. Do you know that Donald Trump is right now building the Arc de Trump? That this is going to be right there in the center of Washington, D.C., in addition to the shrine that exists to Thomas Jefferson. The temple that is built, and one's a shrine, one's a temple to Abraham Lincoln, and this towering obelisk of religious adoration to George Washington. There's going to be an Arc of Triumph to Donald Trump. They have shrines, don't they? Splendor and majesty. Temples and tombs. Yeah, look at those pharaohs with those giant pyramids. Didn't work out really well for them. You'd think after a while, when you found the rotting carcasses of the bodies of the pharaohs with all of the extravagance of their burials, that somebody would say, hey, this bodily resurrection thing, this religion thing, yeah, not so much. Well, that's God's message. That's 14:8. And you yourself will forcibly be cast out from your burial site, from your sepulcher and tomb, even dying like a loathed, abhorred, and repulsive, completely rejected offshoot, to be guarded against a dangerous scion and branch, clothed in and wearing the slain and slaughtered, those you pierced by war, cut and severed by sword, descending to this depressed prison like a corpse which is rejected. Yes, what God is telling you here, you may want to pay attention to, is that it doesn't matter how pretty and how bold or how powerful or how large and opulent the tomb, you're not going to get the benefit of death or any allegiance or worship in death. You see, all of those leaders throughout history, all of those religious and political leaders in history, including the worst of them today, Donald Trump and his cadre of clowns and his MAGA supporters, the Christians that rally around him, enable him to do these horrible things, are all going to be forcibly cast out of their burial sites. Their sepulchers are going to spew them out in death, loathed and abhorred, repulsive, completely rejected even by death. Imagine being rejected by death. Yes, they're nothing but dangerous scions and netzers, tertiary shoots, sticks, twigs, clothed in and wearing the very slain and slaughtered. They're going to be covered in the blood of their victims, pierced by war, ravaged by sword, all descending into this prison. the corpses and carcasses of all who are rejected in this way. Again, you don't think that's appropriate for God to have recompense, to hold them accountable? I can tell you that God's not going to listen to your argument in their favor. And if you try to make an argument in their favor, you'll likely join them. So my advice to you would be to cease trying to protect them, cease complaining about God sending them here, and do something with your life that has some value, like walking away from religion and politics and then coming to know Yahweh. That's a lot to ask. Maybe that's too much of an ask. You will not be like them in burial, because you have corrupted and destroyed your land. Your compatriots and followers you have intentionally slaughtered and viciously slain. The offspring of evil will never be invited nor called out. They will remain unwelcome for all time, for eternity. There's no coming back from this. You rebel against Yahweh. You rebel against his chosen implements. It's over. There is no second chance for that. There is no do-over for that. And you can't complain that, well, it's meaner for somebody to say they're going to hell. Take it up with God. I trust him. He's doing the right thing. I understand why he's doing it. There is no other moral or rational choice, and God's going to be consistent. He's going to be rational. He's going to be moral. He's going to stand up for his people, which means holding those who abuse them accountable. And so death will not be the end of life. Such is the review of Yeshaya 14. When we begin our family hour this evening, we will commence with our review of Daniel 9, where so many powerful prophetic statements are presented. This will be the continuation of that Antichrist series, but it is a powerful study. And the proper positioning and the timing, even the explanation of who does what, when, and where to whom, that you'll read anywhere among the Torah and prophets. It will be a riveting beginning to this continuation of our series on the Antichrist. I hope you join us this evening. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Craig Winn.